Good morning. Welcome to House Labor and Health and Social Services Committee. I'd like to welcome all of the members of our committee and those in the audience and those that are with us via Zoom. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and Mr. Caldwell, if you can call the roll.
Representative Clausen.
Here.
Representative Guggenmoss.
Here.
Representative Heft. Representative McCann. Representative Ottman.
Here.
Representative Stivar.
Excused.
Representative Wasserberger. Representative Yin.
Here.
Chairman Rodriguez-Williams.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Okay, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, there's a sheet of paper out front of the meeting room that explains our rules of the committee. I'm going to go over a few. The first one being, please keep your cell phones on silent. And I'll highlight a few more that pertain to decorum. Although it might seem an awkward formality, speakers will address the comments and questions to the chairman, not to individual committee members or to others in attendance. This helps us avoid personalities and comments of a personal nature. Comments will be directed to the issue under discussion by the committee. Distracting comments on unrelated side issues are out of order and will be called out of order. Speakers will avoid personal criticism, ridicule, or name-calling directed at anyone else in attendance at the meeting. This includes comments of a personal nature directed at other speakers, audience members, or members of the committee. For audience members, we expect you will refrain from any behavior that disrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting. Specifically, the rules prohibit speaking out loud when another person is talking, carrying on loud and distracting side conversations, any shouting, clapping, wooing, booing in response to speakers' comments. Our general guideline is simply that everyone conducts themselves in a civil and respectful manner at all times during the meeting. And I would appreciate your cooperation on that. Okay, we are going to move House Bill 135 titled Autologous or Direct Blood Donations on the table for consideration. For those of you that are just now joining us, we introduced this bill and heard public testimony on this bill at our last meeting and ran out of time. So where we left off was inviting registered lobbyists to come forward and testify on this bill. They didn't get that chance. So at this time, I would like to invite any registered lobbyists to come forward on House Bill 135. Good morning, welcome. Please state your name and who you're with and whether or not you oppose or support the bill, and we would like to hear your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, committee members. Eric Bully with Wyoming Hospital Association. And I'd actually be happy if somebody would woo every once in a while when I come up, but thank you. Madam Chairman, I've had our hospitals take a look at this, and we're fine with the bill, but I just wanted to maybe talk through a few of the logistics and what happens currently to make the committee aware. We already allow direct blood or donation for oneself in our facilities. We have policies that allow that to happen. I will tell you it's not a very common practice, but what I would also tell you is that we normally don't collect that blood ourselves. Our blood supplies come through Vitalant, and for a lot of different reasons. The main reason, though, is our hospitals, especially our small ones, don't have the equipment. One of my hospitals quoted that to have the equipment to do this in-house would be at least $60,000 for the equipment. We've also heard that even though it's directly donated or donated for oneself, there is waste. A lot of times those units go unused. And so with that said, we're supportive of it, but want you to realize that our blood supplier is the most important part of this. And I think we heard from them some of the challenges they face. I thought it was interesting that they said there were only 4,000 units all of last year in their network. That's pretty telling that it's not widely used, but we do have policies in place to allow this to happen if this bill moves forward. And I'm not even sure we necessarily need the bill. We're already doing it when we can. With that, I'd answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Boley. Committee, any questions for Mr. Boley? Comments? Seeing none, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, are there any other registered lobbyists that want to come forward? Okay, seeing none, we do have one person registered online. Well, there's two, but one actually spoke last time, so we're going to need to move on. If you would bring Mr. Elliott in. Mr. Elliott, we can't hear you if you're on there. If you can unmute and turn on your camera as well, that would be great.
Can you hear me?
Good morning. Welcome to House Labor and Health. If you'd please state your name, who you're with, whether or not you oppose or support the bill, and we have 2 minutes to hear your testimony.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Cole Elliott, and I'm here to represent the American Red Cross, and I serve as medical director for Wyoming. I hear you, and I respect your concerns. I oppose the bill, but I do not oppose autologous and directed donations. Autologous and directed donations are not against the law currently and are available for healthcare providers to order. The bill is not needed to provide these blood products. The Red Cross is a humanitarian organization with the mission.
Mr. Elliott, unfortunately, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep, if you'd please start over.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Cole Elliott, and I'm here to represent the American Red Cross and serve as medical director for Wyoming. I hear you, and I respect your concerns. I oppose the bill, but I do not oppose autologous and directed donations. Autologous and directed donations are not against the law currently and are available for healthcare providers to order. The bill is not needed to provide these blood products. The Red Cross is a humanitarian organization with the mission of helping, and that extends to our blood donor and supply operations. We take what the donors give us and help as many people as possible. Something to keep in mind, autologous and directed donations address what is planned medically. However, they do not address what is not planned medically, such as an emergency. Directed donations are not safer than those from volunteer donor community. If the intent of the bill is to remove the blood center physicians, a hospital receiving a directed unit may not be able to release it to the patient. The blood may not be compatible. Blood products are highly regulated, and each hospital blood bank must do their own due diligence to verify the unit is compatible and safe. Directed donations from close family members pose a risk and must be irradiated to prevent graft versus host disease. Hospital blood banks may not be set up to receive and release these type of units, and that could put a strain on smaller hospitals. The units may be wasted, and that those resources could have been allocated to other patients. Could the bill lead to price fixing is a concern. I agree with Dr. Vassallo's previous testimony on all points. In conclusion, I do not oppose these donations, but for me, this is not a limited government approach, and I oppose the bill respectfully.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Committee, any questions of Mr. Elliott? Okay, seeing none, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right. That concludes public comment on House Bill 135. Committee, what is your pleasure? Bill moved by Representative Heft. Second by Representative Gugamas. Discussion, amendments. Representative Yin.
Madam Chairman, thank you. So I'm in favor of people being able to do this. It sounds like people already can. I guess the question is there a problem that the bill is actually solving, or are we just putting this regulation in there for people to know that it's available? So if it's just to put it in the green books, I don't think it's necessary, and I think putting things in the green books unnecessarily can create problems. And so probably vote against it, but again, if we identify that there is a problem with people being able to self-direct or get directed blood donations, I think we can identify what that problem exactly is, because it was very vague. We heard that there could be more paperwork, but we weren't really sure exactly what that meant. If we can identify the actual problem, I'm happy to work on solving it, but a bill by itself doesn't seem to make any sense for me. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Representative Gugamas.
I will concur. This is allowed currently. What this bill is meant to do, though, is to codify it, because in other states, there has been a systematic attempt by companies to hinder this process and to make it more difficult in order for people to do direct blood donations and autologous blood donations. So this is strictly really to codify it in Wyoming so that it will always be available and not be taken away. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion. Representative Klauston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to the committee, just asking for some help here. It sounds like one of the issues with this bill is that the physicians at the blood bank don't have power to kind of make sure the blood is adequate, fits, is safe. So I'm looking for somewhere in here, if you guys could help me, just looking for somewhere to add that the facilities physician will certify the blood, if that's the correct term. I'm not sure. It's not really my area, but if anyone else has some thoughts on that, I'd appreciate it.
Representative Gugamas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So could you clarify that question?
Madam Chair.
Representative Klauston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we had heard in testimony that, currently at the blood banks, their physician makes sure that the blood is safe, matches, can be safely used, right? So, so I'm looking for an amendment, somewhere to add that their own physician can certify that blood is safe and matches.
Okay, further discussion? All right, any motions for any amendments or discussion? Representative McCann.
Just to comment on the last speaker's comment, if it's your own blood and it's going back in you, I wouldn't think you would need to go through any type of testing. I mean,
Sure.
is the blood going to get contaminated somewhere in between? I don't think so, but to put some light on it.
Representative
Madam Chair.
Klauston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think this also just deals with direct blood donation as well, though, right? So we're talking about giving it to a friend or family member. So, well, that's the part that definitely probably needs to be looked at.
Okay, additional discussion, any motions for amendments on this bill? Okay. Okay, Representative Klauston, you have an amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, we can work on this later if this passes, but page 2, line 11. Add, this blood will be certified for safety by the facility's own physician.
Okay, Representative Clausen, where would you like to insert that? Which line?
Page 211.
Okay, page 2, line 11. Mr. Caldwell, do you have that?
Just to repeat the amendment, that is to insert the language, this blood will be certified for safety by the facility's own physician.
Correct.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Representative Yen. Discussion on the amendment. Representative Ottman.
Madam Chair, just a question to the bringer of that. When I look down at lines 20, 21, 22, and 23, does that cover your concern? Or that's different? Okay, how's it different? Thank you.
Representative Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Ottman, for that. So the way this reads is that the provider is prescribing this, but the blood is not being checked. So if you want to donate blood to your daughter, we really have no way of knowing that it's a good match. And, there's different blood types, is your blood clean? Is there something that we need to know about? Or if you're receiving donations from a friend, that friend may have something that they're now aware of that's in their blood. So before we transfuse that blood to you, there's some safety concerns that need to be looked at.
Representative Guggemos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was told that those that do this, it goes under the same scrutiny as all other facilities that do the blood donation, and it goes through the same scrutiny, is what I was informed. So I didn't see the need to put that in the bill because it was already taken care of by those that are in that realm. So just FYI.
Okay. I don't see Vitalant here. Okay, committee, what is let's go ahead and vote on the amendment. All those in favor of Representative Clausen's amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
That amendment has failed. Any additional amendments? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Caldwell, if you would call the roll on House Bill 135.
This is a roll call vote for House Bill 135. Representative Clausen. No. Representative Guggenmoss.
Aye.
Representative Heft. Representative McCann. Representative Ottman.
Aye.
Representative Stivar. Representative Wasserberger. Aye. Representative Yen.
No.
Chairman Rodriguez Williams. Madam Chairman, that is 6 aye, 2 no, and 1 excused.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. So House Bill 135 has passed committee. Representative Guggenmoss, if you'd be prepared to carry that on the floor. All right, we will move on. Committee, I will now replace House Bill House Bill 64 on the table for your consideration. This bill sponsored by Representative Nyman, titled Chemical Abortions Ultrasound Requirements. Welcome, Speaker Nyman, to Labor and Health. If you would be so kind and walk us through your bill.
Good morning, committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to address you this morning. I am Representative Chip Nyman, House District Number 1, and I bring you House Bill 64, Chemical Abortions Ultrasound Requirement, and would ask for your favorable consideration. I look forward to the discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, currently This bill was brought last year, as many of you may well know, and passed out of this committee on through and was passed to the legislature, but was ultimately vetoed by the governor with the idea or the understanding that it would potentially have impacts on current legislation that was being considered in the courts. And was relayed that there would be potentially some, skewing or whatever. He just didn't want to muddy the waters, I guess. But I bring it back to you again this year because this is still happening. And to me, this is an extremely important issue that we as a state need to address. Chemical abortion is continuing to increase in the amount of being provided for and asked for in this state and in this country. I've seen some information here just even this morning where we're seeing almost 64% of abortions now are being provided by chemical means. And so that, I believe, and among other issues that we'll discuss here this morning, is the reasoning behind the need for this piece of legislation. I believe that this is a piece of compassionate legislation. Compassionate from one perspective, from the standpoint of the mother or the woman that is in this position, that has decided that this is the means that she wants to be able to procure the ending of that pregnancy. From the standpoint of health reasons, going into the idea of why we do this and what the necessity of ultrasound is, the fact that those chemicals that are used to provide this chemical abortion, the ending of life, are designed to be used before the 10 weeks of age of the baby. How do we know if that baby is that far along without adequate ultrasound, knowing the size and weight of the child, whether or not this is a viable fetus, that 20%, up to 20% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage or reabsorption, whether or not this is an ectopic pregnancy, which when in a situation of an ectopic pregnancy, this is contraindicated for the use of ending that pregnancy or taking care of that. They require that you would have an ultrasound to be able to locate and make sure. And sadly, ladies and gentlemen, I would say that this bill is simply an effort to try to make sure that the baby is in the exact right position, that is young enough and is basically a viable, a healthy fetus to have the life ended quickly and hopefully effectively by these drugs, if that was so chosen. In the situation where I talk about the need for care of the woman and compassion for her, is if those things are not identified, ladies and gentlemen, then her life is at risk. And there are multiple reports where it talks about the taking of these drugs causes excessive bleeding and cramping and things that are done primarily at home and without the ability to be able to know whether or not that fetus was at the proper stage of development to be able to receive these drugs. Many of these drugs are being sent to us through the mail. And so there's no requirement to make sure that someone has been seen by a doctor. And so from the other standpoint, as far as compassion for both people, which I believe we're talking about two individuals, two people here, this opportunity for the compassion of the chance to be able to hear that heartbeat and to be able to know that that baby is real, it is there, and to know the size of it. And if you care enough about that little tiny person to be able to say, if it's too large to take these chemicals, they need to know it. Because who would want to be put through that? Is it the right dosage? An ultrasound would provide that. It would provide that knowledge that we need to be able to do this procedure correctly. The performance of an ultrasound is standard of care for any proposed obstetrical or gynecological procedure. The acceptable standard of care is to obtain an ultrasound evaluation of the pregnancy before performing any significant medical or surgical procedure on a pregnant woman. Hence this bill. It is essential to know the location of the pregnancy, as I've discussed, the estimated gestational age, and whether the unborn child has cardiac activity. It is also necessary to rule out uterine anomalies. An ultrasound most accurately provides this information. First, it confirms the viable pregnancy. Second, it confirms the pregnancy is not, as I discussed, ectopic. And it verifies gestational age. According to the Mayo Clinic, as I stated, up to 20% of pregnancies end in miscarriage. Knowing whether or not a pregnancy is viable can prevent a woman from undergoing an unnecessary abortion procedure. there's been some discussion about, and there may be some questions in regards to this in the discussion of who's going to pay for this. What weight are we going to put on the woman to have this ultrasound provided for her? Pregnancy care centers provide free ultrasounds if they've asked. Any kind of resource center are glad and able to provide the ultrasound that is needed to be able to comply with this piece of legislation. So as far as the burden of cost, I would also ask who's paying for the chemicals? Who's providing those chemicals? Are we going to be asked to be able to provide for that cost as well? But I do know that there are free services to provide the ultrasounds to these mothers in order to comply with this. Importantly, chemical abortion is specifically and as I just stated, contraindicated for ectopic pregnancies. An ultrasound uses sound waves technology to examine the ultimate child, including determining gestational age. The FDA-approved chemical abortion regime is only available up to 10 weeks gestational age and is not approved for later gestation. So ladies and gentlemen, I would ask, why would it not make sense that we would verify the age of that baby before we would take these drugs or allow them to be ingested? For the safety of the mother, I would ask, and for compassion for that child. Okay, I'll take you through the bill. As you look through, you can go first page, it gives us an indication of the bill and the title. Moving on through the bill, we define and go back through in our current statutes and make definitions. We are creating two new statutes. We'll be creating 35-6201 and 35-6202 are created to read, and you can go through the bill and you can see where we define. And we explain also to treat a woman for ectopic pregnancy is defined. D on page 3, treat a woman for cancer or other. These are things that are not going to be restricted or problematic. These are things that we clearly enunciate, and that is why that this is subject to the bills that are currently in litigation. Chemical abortions and abortions are taking place freely in Wyoming right now. That's the need for this. If and when those pieces of legislation are decided and settled, then this will be supplanted, this will be removed. But until then, this is to protect those pregnancies that are being ended currently, is why we're doing this. Not less than, this is what the bill asks for, is not less than 48 hours before a pregnant woman procures the drugs or substances for a chemical abortion, or before a physician or pharmacist dispenses the drugs or substances necessary for a chemical abortion. On page 4, we continue, abortion, whichever is earlier, the pregnant woman shall receive an ultrasound in order to provide the pregnant woman the opportunity to review the active ultrasound of the unborn baby and hear the heartbeat of the unborn baby if the heartbeat is audible. And, ladies and gentlemen, as we previously discussed, to establish the age and weight and location of that pregnancy. Moving on, the date and time and place of the ultrasound, the physician to order the requested ultrasound. These are all verifications. And the reason I put these in the law is because who knows, you can actually get an ultrasound sent online to you, not having been done on the woman that is procuring the medication. There's no verification. They can send you an ultrasound. What I'm asking is that we make sure that we have a verified ultrasound of that pregnancy within a timely fashion, within those 48 hours, so that we know that if the chemicals are going to be prescribed and procured, that we have verified the age of that baby. So it's not too far along, that it's in the proper location for the mother's life and for the quick ending of that child. Chemicals were designed to be used for up to 10 weeks in gestation. To give you an idea, I wear these feet on my lapel. That is the actual size of a 10-week-old baby's feet. I noticed that several of you wear those as well, to give you an indication of how small that child needs to be according to the direction of the drugs in order for it to be effective and to be used safely, supposedly. Not for the child, but for the mother. Moving on through the rest of the bill, it lays out the requirements and any conflicts that would happen, as I stated, with the legislation that is currently in litigation or in our courts. In 2021, based on incomplete and unreliable data, the FDA removed the in-person dispensing requirement for the sale of chemical abortion pills and allowed for the sale online. This was wrong and will only increase the danger to women and not mention the children whose lives will be ended. There was a regulation in 2016 that you had to have this, and it was removed. It is not required in Wyoming. A few other points I'd like to make here before I would ask any questions. Many side effects can occur during this, including uterine bleeding, hemorrhaging, and severe infection. Failure to diagnose ectopic pregnancy can result in death. Failure to determine the gestational age of the baby can result in increased risk of hemorrhage and tissue left inside the uterus, leading to infection. If taking after the 12th week of pregnancy, the risk of hemorrhaging requiring surgery approaches 1 out of every 3 women. This is especially important in light of the FDA allowing abortion drugs to be sent by mail without an ultrasound or in-person exam to accurately date the pregnancy. And as I said earlier in my discussion, the use of chemical abortifacients in order to provide abortion is on the rise, supposedly for its convenience, and which it tells us too that these folks are doing this at home in the hope that it will quickly end and be a simple and easy procedure. But the truth and the fact remains, women are subjected to life-threatening and potentially lethal effects of this. And my admonition in this, and I wish I could say that I'm going to prevent all abortions because I am staunchly pro-life. I believe that life is to be respected and be preserved and given the opportunity to be free and to live. According to our Constitution, I believe that life is guaranteed under that. I believe governments were instituted among men to protect life. But sadly, if this is going to happen, at the very least, I think we should protect the women that are subjecting themselves to this. And I believe at the very least, and I know you can call it whatever you want, ladies and gentlemen, I want that baby to have as many opportunities as they possibly can. You know part of what I'm up here for, and that is to allow a mom to be able to hear the audible sound of a heartbeat and recognize that that is a human heart beating. And if they so see fit to continue on this path and to end that pregnancy, that is their choice at this time, and that can happen. I'm not preventing that. I'm just asking that there would be protections in place to preserve and to protect their life, their health and well-being if they so choose this. And if nothing else, if we're going to end the life of this child, please end it quickly. So with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Any questions on House Bill 64 of the bill sponsor? Representative Wasserberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for proposing your bill, Representative. I was just wondering if you have any possible ideas for people that maybe need like counseling services or things like that as far as after having one of these incidences happen with an abortion. I just have talked to a few women that have struggled with that before, and I was just wondering if maybe you got any ideas down the road to help with some of those possible needs.
Madam Chairman, through you.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Wasserberger, yes, we have resource centers all over the state of Wyoming. I believe, I can't remember how many are. We actually have one in Gillette where I'm at up there. There's also resource centers over in South Dakota at Spearfish, not far from where we live. And we support those resource centers, and those centers are there for counseling before and even after a woman has chosen to take this procedure. And they are there for support, emotional support. And quite frankly, Representative Wasserberger, I would suggest that we have churches. We have other support groups. Maybe if that's not their inclination that they want to go for that type of counseling and help, there are multiple resources out there to help women. And quite frankly, we need to think about the dads too. I mean, it took 2 people to create this life, and 2 people are going to be affected by the ending of this life. There's no doubt in my mind of that. There are multiple sorts of resources out there, and I would say, first of all, the resource centers, these very same locations that will provide these ultrasounds for free as an opportunity for them to be able to make a better, more well-founded decision in how they're going to proceed with the pregnancy or not proceed with that pregnancy. And so that would be my first thought, is they are trained professionals many times in those facilities that are there as sources of support and encouragement to try to prevent, I would hope, that ending of that life, but they're also there to be able to provide support for folks that have made that decision, that are dealing with the consequences, the emotional and trauma that goes with this. You know, I mean, I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but now to your point, Representative, if you've provided this system of ending that life at home, I'm going to say probably that baby's going to end up in the toilet. And when somebody, and I've heard stories, and I've been told stories that when they turn around and realize and see that, and they'll live with that for the remainder of their lives, they need help. That's not an easy thing. I would have to believe it would be devastating. And so I do believe, and I appreciate your question, that is necessary and desperately needed in this situation, and it is out there and it's available.
Thank you. Committee, any other questions for the bringer of the bill? Representative Clouston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Speaker, for being here and bringing this. You know, there's 27 states that require an ultrasound before any abortion procedure. This is limited to chemical abortions. Is there a reason why we limited it to the chemical abortions?
Speaker Nyman.
Wyoming currently has no regulations in regards to chemical abortions. That's why we brought it specifically to that. And so this, in this situation, the reason I brought this is specifically for the fact that they have to know the age and weight of the fetus, which you don't know, and you can take this at home. Standard chemical, surgical abortions would take place in a facility, you know, that would be able to take care of those situations or be able to identify, you know, what they're going to be doing mechanically. I believe this needed to be very specific in the fact that so much increase in the number of these chemical abortions taking place at home when there has not been intervention by doctors online, is that I just believe that we need to pump the brakes, let these folks have a chance to make sure of knowing where that fetus is located, if it is of the correct gestational age, and give that mom a chance to think about this even briefly, not stopping her, but just briefly, and also the chance to be able to identify that child and to recognize its humanity. And there again, go back to the point of making sure that it's in the proper location and the proper size for the chemicals, if they so see fit, to do the proper job quickly and efficiently.
Additional questions of the bill sponsor? Representative Yin.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Mr. Speaker, a lot of questions. First one, we passed a bill, the legislature, not this session, but a previous session, that banned all abortions. If you believe, I mean, you voted for the bill, so I assume you believe it was constitutional. Why do we need another bill that does something if we have banned all abortions?
Speaker Nyman.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you. Representative Yin, it's because abortions right now are fully legal in Wyoming as that is being decided. And we've seen an ever-increasing number of abortions that are being reported in the state. I'm talking about what's happening right now. I don't know how long it's going to take for that to be decided, sir. I don't know how much time we have. My attitude in this is these mothers and these babies are dealing with this now. And my fear is that if we've seen it, I've watched the decision coming in the lower courts. Took a long time. And now we're waiting in the interim for the Supreme Court to take this up. I don't know how long that will last. I'm talking about abortions that are taking place right now and the potential risks to the women that are doing them through chemical means and to the child. Making sure that we don't endanger her, first of all, in the situation that we've talked about, and also making sure that that baby doesn't suffer. Because it's happening right now, sir. And that's why I want this taken care of.
So,
Representative Yin.
thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Speaker, would you be okay with a repealer if the court case, after the court case has been decided, or if the court case gets decided in favor of the existing law? I don't want to clutter up our green books if it's not necessary.
Madam
Speaker
Chair.
Nyman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Yin, yeah, in the legislation, this is subject to that decision. And so if you lead it at 130, it's subject to, I think it's, 139. If any provision of this article conflicts with the Life as a Human Right Act, the provisions of the Life is Human Right Act shall take control over. So that would replace that. So we're talking about what it's going to do right now in the interim, in the process. And I don't know how long that's going to take to get decided, sir.
Additional questions of the bill sponsor from the committee. Representative Gugamas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding that Wyoming already has some ultrasound requirements for other abortions currently that were brought earlier by, I believe, then Representative Gray. Is that correct? That there are requirements for other abortions to have the ultrasound?
Speaker Nyman.
I wish I could speak to that, Representative Chairman, Representative Gugamas. I'm not going to pull your leg. I don't believe so. I don't believe there are, other than, other than what would be provided by the mechanical surgical abortion center. I would think that they would provide that service. But as far as requirements right now, we do not. And that's why the point of this is to make sure that we do have a requirement that if you are going to choose this avenue of abortion, that you would make sure that it would be identified and correctly utilized and through making sure the gestational age and location of that child is identified before the drugs are procured and utilized.
Additional questions from the committee. Representative Wasserberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Nyman, I've had a lot of people that I've spoken to over the years that seem to choose to go this route because of economic concerns, and from the sounds of it, it sounds like a lot of people struggle with being able to put their children up for adoption. And would you have any ideas or solutions to add to this maybe down the road to make it easier for people to give adoption, making it cheaper to adopt a child, and also when a parent has adopted that child that they're able to keep their child, and maybe that the parent 5 years later, or the person that gave birth 5 years later, can't come back and try to take it to court that they're wanting their child back?
Speaker Nyman.
Chairman, Representative Wasserberger, there is no question that our adoption laws are going to have to be readdressed and made sure that we are able to do the best job we possibly can to provide good homes for these kids. It is not lost on me that people come up here and say, okay, well, you're going to save that baby. Now, what are you going to do with it? You guys are fighting to keep them. Isn't it just easier to do it this way? Why would you just put the labor on everybody else? Well, that would just say that, how valuable is human life? To your point, I do believe that we have onerous problems in being able to provide adoption opportunities for families. I spoke recently at an event here, just briefly giving an overview of some of the legislation that's available. I was stopped as I was leaving the conference there, the gathering, and they said, we tried to adopt a child, an older child, a 10-year-old child. And they said that the costs and the problems that we had to go to were so onerous, they said that we actually kind of gave up. So to your point, yes, we've got major problems in that way too. And yes, I will work diligently. That would be my commitment. I believe the commitment of others in our legislature and other groups to provide homes if these children are brought to term and given that opportunity to have life. It is difficult for me many times to watch as you can go to another country and adopt a child for far less expense and far less trouble than you can to provide a home here to a child in this country. That's a problem. And then we need to evaluate that. And we need to be able to have a system where we can work through quickly and less expensively to provide those homes for these kids. I don't want to do this just to create more problems. And I see that as part of the problem. We do need to address that. And I would be glad to work with you, Representative Wasserberger, and others to be able to fight and knock down those barriers that gives an argument to the idea that it's just easier to do this than to create more problems on the system. Maybe there's going to have a difficult life, and that they, it's just an easier fix. Ladies and gentlemen, I would submit to you that this is not easier. Abortion is not easy. And it ends a life. For many, they don't not believe that this is a life. But I don't know, you can't get life from death. It begins, and it is real, and it is life, and it needs to be respected. And it's not just that baby. And I want to iterate that clearly to all of you. is that I'm talking about the impacts that it has on the lady that is in this situation, and she's trying to figure out a way how to best manage it. So yes, we're dealing with adoption and making sure that that avenue is fixed and more available can help in this situation too. So I do believe it is a part of this. But right now, this is what we're dealing with. And chemical abortion is a real problem, and that we have to be able to be dealing with it very maturely and carefully.
Thank you, Speaker Nyman. Committee, I'd like to encourage you to keep questions on the bill topic. We have, it's a quarter to 9, and we have quite a few people that want to provide public comment. So I am going to move on to public comment on House Bill 64. If you are in the audience and would like to testify on House Bill 64, please raise your hand. Okay. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, looks like 13 in the audience, 13 or 14 in the audience, and we have 13 online that want to testify. With that in mind, I'm going to be really transparent about the process of public comment. We're going to start with government agencies first. We're going to move on to the public that's in the audience, and then the public that's on Zoom. And then we'll move on to registered lobbyists that are here to testify. Again, on House Bill 64 is what we're on. I am going to limit public testimony to 2 minutes. I encourage everybody that wants to testify to state who you're with, your name, who you're with, what organization you're with, or if you're representing yourself as an individual. State whether or not you're for or against the bill, and please try to not repeat anything that's already been said. So if somebody, steals your thunder, don't repeat it. Let's focus on a different point. Again, 2 minutes, and my vice chair will be timing. So at this point, I'd like to bring up anybody that is representing a government agency to come forward on House Bill 64. Okay, seeing none, I would invite any members of the public that are opposed to the bill to come forward. And we've got 3 chairs, so come on up and fill the chairs. Welcome to Labor and Health. We'll begin with you. If you just state your name, and we'll hear your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and the committee. Can you all hear me? Okay. My name is Katie Knutter, and I'm the Executive Director of Wellspring Health Access, and I'm speaking in opposition to the bill. We are the organization that operates the state's only procedural and medication abortion facility. Medication abortion is what we call, what is referred to as chemical abortion, as is the medical terminology. We feel that this bill usurps the doctor-patient relationship, and by mandating a 48-hour waiting period, people choosing medication abortion will face delays in care. By pushing people past the limit that they will be able to do medication abortion by having that 48-hour waiting period, people may be forced to have a procedural abortion when they would have preferred a medication abortion. This bill is discriminatory, targeting women who want to access medication abortion in particular. This creates an additional burden for women in rural areas who must already travel to seek health care. As Wyoming is a very large state with a large rural population, this is a significant hurdle. And according to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, most abortion care globally is provided without ultrasound examination. It should be left up to the evaluating physician to decide if an ultrasound is necessary on a case-by-case basis according to medical evidence. Furthermore, the requirement of a waiting period after a forced ultrasound demeans women's decision-making capability. Women are capable of making their medical decisions without being forced by the state to wait longer to access medical services. The Wyoming Constitution supports this right in Article 1, Section 38, that states that all citizens have the right to make their own medical decisions. This section was upheld by a district court judge last year who found that it specifically applied to abortion services. While this case is still undergoing litigation, that is currently the law of the land.
Ma'am, you're out of time. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Go ahead, just please state your name and we'll hear your testimony for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Dr. Renee Hinkle. I am an OBGYN physician in Cheyenne. I've been here for 26 years. I do not do elective abortions, but banning elective abortions, as we have seen across the country, does affect the care that all OBGYNs give in the state and in the country. I agree with everything that was just said. Abortion is healthcare. And the court in Wyoming just agreed with that, upheld by the court, as she said. Reproductive health care does have repercussions if it is banned, and we can see that in the state of Texas and in many other states that have banned. The maternal mortality, the women dying in labor or delivery or pregnancy, has increased in the country since these bans have occurred 11%. In Texas alone, it increased 56%. Women dying. We're not talking about abortions. We're talking about women who are pregnant dying. Women have more risk of dying or having complications from pregnancy than any abortion. Abortion rate, complications occur less than 1%. Transfusions from hemorrhage occur less than 0.1%. And maternal mortality is well above that, no matter which state you look at. American College of OBGYN, the group that we use to do our standards of care, and Speaker Neiman was wrong, standard of care in the United States is no longer to have an ultrasound for medication abortion, which is the medical term. So they do not recommend it as long as the patient meets certain criteria. And the person prescribing the medication will go through those criteria. If they don't meet criteria, our standards say, yes, you do need an ultrasound if there's an increased risk of ectopic. Ectopic pregnancies occur less than 1.3% of the time in women undergoing medication abortion. That is less than ectopics throughout the country in people not undergoing abortion. So we know that these screening tests work. And so mandating government overreach to make a state law to say that an ultrasound is required by people who are not medical professionals is overreach and is not necessary. We do our own government criteria. Also, dating
Ma'am,
is
you're out
done
of
by
time.
last menstrual period.
Thank you for your testimony. Please state your name. You've got 2 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Wendy Volk. I appreciate you responding to my email and having me the opportunity to speak. I live here in Cheyenne. I'm a fifth-generation Wyoming Republican, fifth-generation Wyoming business leader. I'd like to bring up something that hasn't been brought up. Wyoming leaders proudly promote our state as pro-business and pro-economic development, yet we fail to address a crucial economic issue, reproductive freedom. Overlooking this is short-sighted and will profoundly affect Wyoming's future. Women of childbearing age are increasingly leaving Wyoming, fearing the lack of accessible reproductive care. Pregnancy always carries health risks, and without comprehensive care, including abortion, these risks escalate. As Dr. Hinkle just mentioned, young women feel dismissed when legislators push through restrictive laws such as this that's before us, based on personal beliefs rather than sound medical science. I find the title of the bill offensive because it is not recognized as a medical terminology. We are establishing Wyoming terminology in this bill that is not medically recognized in any of the medication publications I researched. As a result, Wyoming is losing talented, hardworking individuals and families, along with the economic and cultural vitality they bring. Pregnancy is deeply personal. I know this myself and my family. I'm a mother of 2 children. The government has no place forcing someone to remain pregnant or interfering with decisions made between a woman, her family, her physician, and her faith. Human reproduction is complex, involving circumstances beyond anyone's controls, such as ectopic pregnancies, miscarriages, or pregnancies resulting from abuse. Without reproductive autonomy, true economic, racial, or gender equality in Wyoming is unattainable. If Wyoming wants to remain pro-choice, pro-economic development, and pro-freedom, it must listen to young people and prioritize reproductive rights. Wyoming women, men, and their families increasingly understand that pregnancy is too complicated to legislate at any point.
Ma'am,
Pregnancy-
you're out of time.
Pregnancy is private, not political.
Thank you for your testimony, all of you. If 3 more people can come up. Welcome, all of you. If you would please begin and state your name, and you have 2 minutes to testify. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Hello, my name is Britt Borrell. I was born and raised in Casper, Wyoming, and I am here today as a concerned citizen to voice my opposition to HB 42 and 64, but I will keep my comments limited to 42. However, both of these bills are antithetical to Wyoming values of limited government, personal freedom, and privacy. Additionally, they are simply rehashed versions of the bills that were vetoed just last year. Abortion bans in this state have been rightly judged by the courts to be unconstitutional, and frankly, this body's insistence on fighting for these restrictions is a waste of taxpayer dollars and a representation of the type of vast government overreach that the Republican Party purports to oppose. Upon moving back to Wyoming in 2021, I was shocked at how much more expensive health insurance is here than in any other state in which I have lived. And I was doubly shocked when I needed to seek routine feminine care and could not find a provider to see me for 6 months. Wellspring was the first place that I could get an appointment for a pap smear and a routine STI screening in a reasonable time frame. And these bills are specifically aimed at depriving women of their services by shuttering their practice altogether. We are already facing a crisis in rural maternity care in this state, and we need only look to our neighbor to the west to see how restrictive abortion bans and regulations have pushed nearly a quarter of practicing OBGYNs out of Idaho. Wyoming cannot afford to lose any more maternity or reproductive health providers in this state, and I fear that threatening providers with exorbitant fines for providing ultrasounds when they are not deemed medically necessary by the professional will not only discourage providers from practicing in our state, but will also increase the cost of reproductive health care across the board. And though the speaker addressed this, I believe that he did not address costs adequately. There's no free health care in America. Everything has a cost. Abortion is health care, period. The people of Wyoming do not want the government in our doctor's offices. Please vote no on these proposals.
Thank you for your testimony.
Madam Chairman, are we going to restrict questions for the public for this bill?
Representative Yin, thank you. So I'd actually like to save them to the end. I apologize for that, not being upfront about that. We have quite a few people here that want to testify, and instead of boggling down all of our public with questions, I'd like to hear what they have to say specifically on the bill, and then we can discuss as a committee.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ma'am, please proceed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee. I am Megan Hayes. I am an attorney in private practice, and I am the president of the Pro-Choice Wyoming Board of Directors. As a statewide reproductive freedom organization, Pro-Choice Wyoming opposes House Bill 64. This bill is a thinly veiled attempt to ban abortion in Wyoming. It embodies government overreach at its most intrusive level by interfering with an individual's right to make his or her own healthcare decisions. Wyoming's Constitution explicitly protects the right of every competent adult to make their own healthcare decisions. This provision was added by a vote of the people that passed by an overwhelming 77% with large favorable majorities in every county. That same constitutional provision specifically directs the state of Wyoming to preserve these rights from undue governmental infringement. House Bill 64 aggressively interferes with our citizens' right to make their own healthcare decision. It also invites more litigation from individuals and groups determined to stand by our Constitution and protect their rights. Our state faces numerous healthcare issues, not the least of which is increasing the number of maternity deserts where no prenatal or obstetrical care is available, criminalizing doctors and continuing to waste valuable legislative time and the public's money on attempts to curtail personal rights, excuse me, is a poor use of public resources that would be better put to more pressing needs. Freedom and independence are at the heart of Wyoming values. We appreciate the opportunity to comment on this bill and ask you to respect Wyomingites' personal freedoms and vote no on reporting this bill out of committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Sir, please state your name.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Antonio Serrano. I am the Advocacy Director for the ACLU of Wyoming. We are here today and we oppose House Bill 64. We feel strongly that deeply private and personal decisions about abortion should not be made by politicians, but should be made by pregnant people in consultation with their doctors. Everyone should have the right to control their own bodies and to make their own decisions about their lives and futures, free from punishment, judgment, or political interference. According to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, most abortion care globally is provided without ultrasound examination, additionally requiring a 48-hour waiting period between when a person would have an ultrasound and when they can proceed with the abortion is medically unnecessary. In a state that is rural as ours, this creates an additional burden for people in rural areas who already must travel to seek healthcare, especially in ugly weather like we have lately. This bill is unnecessary and an extreme government overreach. Medical abortion has been safely used for decades without intrusive mandates like this, especially a government-mandated medical procedure with no medical purpose. Medical professionals know what they're doing, and they know when an ultrasound is medically needed. The government should not be guiding healthcare decisions. The Wyoming legislature is walking into the examination room and saying they should have a say on one of the most personal private medical decisions anyone has to make. This bill has nothing to do with healthcare. It's all about politics. We ask you to vote no on House Bill 64.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Thank you, all three. We'll take three public testimony in support of the bill. Please come forward if you're in support of the bill. Welcome to Labor and Health. Senator Hutchings, if you would begin. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee on and for the bill. As I listened to what was being said, a lot of it was not geared primarily to chemical abortions, just abortions. And it seems like, I don't know if the audience didn't hear, that this bill seems primarily geared to the safety of a mother, not, well, in a roundabout way. He even mentioned he wants to stop abortions. I want to stop the killing of children. But for the safety of the mother, this bill is so important. I also heard a lot about Article 1, where it talked about making your own healthcare decisions. During that period, I would venture to say no one who voted for that particular amendment had abortions in mind, but I believe it was the Affordable Health Care Act that was in mind. I think this is a common sense piece of legislation. And to answer Representative Yin's question, if I may, if abortions were allowed to be free and legal in Wyoming in any kind of stage possible, I still think this common sense legislation, Madam Chair, would make sense to be something that you want to remain on the books. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Hutchings. Sir, please state your name and your position on the bill.
Good morning. My name is Ross Schrickman. I'm the president of the Natrona County chapter of Wyoming Right to Life, an organization with 600 members in our county. Biologically, I'm also a clump of cells that makes up a human person. I'm here to speak in support of the legislation. We must protect women from the physical and emotional harm caused by abortion. And as the courts deal with this, we must protect public safety under Title 35. Abortion is not complicated when we understand it. An abortion is the intentional killing of an unborn child. To commit an abortion, you need to have a live baby. I would suggest the public look at a website, whatisabortion.com. Another good source for facts about abortion from the perspective of doctors can be found through the American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Their website is aaplog.org. Being in Casper, I know a number of OBGYNs. Until the abortion business opened recently, none of them are, as far as I know, were committing abortions. The other thing is there's been confusion about the difference between an abortion and a miscarriage. In a miscarriage, the baby has already died, and the doctor is removing the dead baby from the mother. As far as claims that chemical abortions are safe, there are studies and reports that prove that this is not the case, and it is in my written testimony I've given you this morning. Undiagnosed conditions have led to a significant increase in severe emergency visits. Disturbingly, some abortion businesses have told women that if they have an emergency, they should lie and tell hospital personnel that they did not have an abortion, but a miscarriage. Encouraging such false reporting is extremely dangerous for women in such situations. The current abortion business in Casper has a website, and they say that very proudly that they do chemical abortions up to 11 weeks. I hold in my hand a model of a 10-week-old baby. Okay, that's 10 weeks.
Sir, you are out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Please state your name and.
Madam
Love to hear from
Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. I speak for myself. As technology and science advance, we risk losing our humanity. Bureaucracies define away tough problems, and when you hear things like abortion is health care, that draws together situations where an abortion is appropriate and situations where it is just a matter of convenience. And this bill seeks to, not to prevent an abortion per se, the bill seeks to speak for the child, because an abortion involves the death of a child. We should not give up on the child. Representative Wasserberger asked a question about that. We should not give up on the child, and this bill is about not giving up, about making sure that the administration of the chemicals is done medically properly with the timing limits and those kind of things. So I ask you simply, this bill is about not losing sight of our humanity. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winnie. Thank you, gentlemen. Ma'am, please state your name. Former Representative Ward, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Jeanette Ward, and I representing myself in my comments. I'd like to respond to some of the previous commenters. The court referred to by previous commenters is the most radical court in the state of Wyoming, and a certain executive who appointed that radical judge allowed our abortion ban to be forum shopped. Every week I stand in front of that abortuary that was previously referred to. It's in Casper with a sign that reads, "Wicked judges do not make law." We've been spat at, cursed at, and threatened. At that abortuary, women have been injured. The operators of that macabre establishment refuse to dial 911 because they don't want it publicly known. It's very telling that those opposed to this bill don't seem to care about the safety of women. An ultrasound is a minimum requirement. Abortion is not health care, it's death care. It results in the death of a human being. Pregnancy is not a disease. Everyone should have the right to control their own bodies. I agree. How about the baby? Does he or she get to decide if he or she wants to be killed? The Republican platform is pro-life. If commenters are pro-death, they need to evaluate whether they are Republicans. Finally, are we really making the argument that you're better off dead than poor? I grew up poor, born to a 19-year-old mama. Is my life not valuable?
Thank you, former Representative Ward, for your testimony. Ma'am, please state your name.
My name is Susan Lone. I'm a resident of Laramie County,
And good morning, Madam Chairman, and thank you for letting me be here for just a moment. I want you to know I'm in favor of this bill, and the reason is because one of the things it does talk about safety. And as a prior deputy sheriff, I equate this bill to something similar to that in preventing or helping life. And the life of the unborn is important, just as the life of any other person that I would have called out to stand, in protection of. And that is how I look at this bill, and that's why I stand in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Caldwell, we'll move on to virtual world there. Ms. Shaver, welcome to Labor and Health. Please state your name, who you're with, whether or not you oppose or support the bill, and you have 2 minutes for testifying.
Appreciate the opportunity. I am Marcy Shaver, resident of Torrington, Wyoming. I'm also the state director for American Atheists. And I've had 7 pregnancy terminations. I think I know a little bit about the subject. Pregnancy is a complicated, dangerous journey for a lot of women. It's also a financial strain for a lot of women. So asking people to have medical care that they don't need is ridiculous. And I don't know how many of you have had a vaginal ultrasound, but that's what's required at this stage. The bill also demands a high quality audio with this, supposedly to hear a heartbeat, but that isn't a heartbeat. There's no such thing at that stage because there is no heart. There are no valves. There is no pulmonary system. It is just a small line of cells that have synchronized an electrical pulse. What it really is like it's faint static that has been converted by a computer into sounding like a heartbeat for whatever reason. Anyway, I stand very opposed to this bill. I have, like I said, 7 times. I never once thought about calling my congressman to see if I could do this. And 1 time did I have to have an ultrasound. So anyway, I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Shaver, and for your testimony. Mr. Caldwell, if we can bring in somebody that's in support, we'll alternate that has their hand raised. Okay, want to try somebody else if he's having technical difficulties. Yes, welcome, Mr. Brechtel. Please state your name and who you're with and whether or not you support or oppose the legislation. You have 2 minutes to testify. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Bob Brechtel, citizen of Natrona County, former legislator. I do support House Bill 64. And I would like to point out that Natrona County has really become become the epicenter for all of Wyoming for abortion, and we are kind of like the abortion destination for all the surrounding states. And so we have a little bit of knowledge and understanding of what this issue is about. I would like to point out further that if the women had the opportunity, abortion-minded women had the opportunity to see that ultrasound, 80% of them statistically would choose life. Ultrasound is sound science, not just a belief. There is great risk to women, and we are very concerned about the inhumane treatment of all human life. With that, Madam Chairman, thank you for your time, and I would answer any questions.
Thank you, former Representative Brechtel, for your testimony this morning. Mr. Caldwell, if you can bring in somebody opposed. Ms. Zanetti, welcome to Labor and Health. If you'd unmute.
Thank you for your patience.
Welcome. If you just state your name and whether or not you support or oppose the bill, and you have 2 minutes to testify.
All right, my name is Audrey Zanetti, and I oppose this bill. I work with the Landor Free Medical Clinic as their patient care coordinator. And one of the biggest things I would like to highlight here is that the pregnancy crisis centers that were mentioned as being able to provide the ultrasounds for these women absolutely will not. I can testify that personally we tried to schedule a patient who was ineligible for Medicaid as well as didn't have any other kind of insurance. She was 18 weeks pregnant and unable to access pregnancy OB-related care. We contacted these centers to try to get a free ultrasound to verify that this wanted pregnancy was going along smoothly and that she didn't need any care or intervention. They denied that ultrasound for this wanted pregnancy under the guise that she was still below viability. And if she wanted to change her mind to get an abortion, they didn't want to provide that care for her. So I can personally say that they will not be performing these abortions, or they will not be performing the ultrasounds for these women seeking chemical abortions. These crisis centers are not there for women to help women. They're there as a barrier. And I mean, as proven with this patient, unfortunately. Chemical abortions are very safe. They're safer than penicillin, over-the-counter Tylenol. There's less hospitalizations for mifepristone and these medications used. So they are very safe. The biggest thing I really want to leave here today, letting everybody know, is there's been some mention about compassion, and that means compassion for my daughter, who wouldn't be here without abortion care. And being able to know that she is going to be able to make her decisions, not some legislature. Nobody's going to prevent her from making her decisions, because I am smart enough and I am strong enough to make my own decisions. Nobody else should be able to make those for me. And like I said, my daughter wouldn't be here without that care, and it's very important to provide to her. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
For your testimony. Mr. Caldwell, if we can bring in somebody in support with their hand raised. Thank you. Ms. Halverson, please unmute. Welcome. Please state your name and whether or not you support or oppose the bill, and we have 2 minutes to testify. Thank you.
Good morning. I assume you're talking to me, Madam Chairman. My name is Marty Halverson. I am the president of Wyoming Right to Life, and we support House Bill 64. This is a crucial piece of legislation. It will ensure that chemical abortion drugs are only administered under current FDA guidelines. To terminate a pregnancy, the drug mifepristone and the drug misoprostol are only authorized for use when a pregnancy is no more than 10 weeks along. An ultrasound will confirm that a woman's pregnancy is not further advanced than that before the drugs are administered. And by the way, this 10-week limit is an increase. It used to be up to 7 weeks only. Mifepristone was approved for the purpose of killing the unborn baby in the year 2000. Its approval by the FDA was rushed as a cure for the illness of pregnancy. Few comprehensive studies or trials on the safety of the drug were conducted in the United States. Last year, a Texas lawsuit to compel the FDA to conduct such research made its way all the way to the United States Supreme Court. The court ultimately found that the plaintiff doctors lacked the standing to sue the FDA. However, Missouri, Idaho, and Kansas are moving forward with another suit that seeks to change the way the drug is prescribed and used. The mifepristone and misoprostol combination accounts for almost half the abortions in this country, and they are available online by out-of-state telehealth providers. These
Ms.
providers.
Halverson, you are out of time. I apologize.
Thank you. Please support this legislation.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Caldwell, if you bring in one opposed with their hand up. Julie Wickham. Welcome to Labor and Health. Please state your name, whether or not you support or oppose the bill, and you have 2 minutes to testify.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Julie Fleming Wickham. I live in Laramie County, and I'm speaking as an individual. I agree with the previous testimony in opposition to the bill, particularly to the extent that this bill seeks to insert itself into a citizen's right to make her own medical decisions as guaranteed by the Wyoming Constitution. For that reason and for the other reasons stated by previous testimony, I oppose Bill 64.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Caldwell, if you can bring in another that's in support with their hand raised. Thank you. Mr. Bartholomew.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome to Labor and Health. If you'd state your name and whether or not you support or oppose the bill, and you have 2 minutes to testify.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm Dr. Dean Bartholomew. I'm a family physician in Powell, Wyoming, and in favor of the tenets of this bill for several reasons. I mean, the main crux of what we're talking about here is informed consent, which is the basis of all of medicine. And there's two parts that I want to speak to. One is the timing, the 48 hours, and then the second is the ultrasound. So I do not currently provide obstetrics, but I do work within this space. I recently was a board member of our local pregnancy resource center, and my wife currently is the executive director. So I hear stories every day of women who come in with unplanned pregnancies who are burdened by the choice they have to make with carrying on this life and versus weighing the societal and financial issues. In terms of 48 hours, within medicine, informed consent, we use time as a factor as much as the information. For example, with vasectomies, I was trained that we had to get informed consent days before the procedure In Oregon, they actually, for Medicaid patients, they require a 30-day wait period between an informed consent and getting a vasectomy. It gives a patient time to think through all these issues. And then in terms of using an ultrasound, we use imaging all of the time when we're making decisions and helping a patient to make a decision, such as maybe a back surgery. You're going to see the MRI. If you're having a cancer surgery, you're going to see imaging to see what's going on. And so using an ultrasound to show what is happening within the uterus is not trickery. It's fact. And so, and as previously mentioned, for women who have an unplanned pregnancy and are weighing those options, 80% of women who see that ultrasound and see the life, see the pregnancy, see the stage of formation, that this is not a clump of cells, that this is a formed embryo or fetus, do make a decision to carry on with life. And so this is not trickery, it's fact and science. Lastly,
Dr. Bartholomew, you are out of time. I apologize.
all right, thank you.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Okay. We are going to move back into the room here. It looks like we have one more lady that would like to testify.
Good morning.
Please state your name, whether or not you support or oppose the bill.
Thank you for allowing me
You
the
have 2
opportunity
minutes.
to comment, Madam Chairman and representatives. My name is Sarah Courtwright, and the one perspective I wanted to provide today in opposition of this bill is the mental health perspective. I've been a counseling psychologist for over 15 years. And excuse me, this is a little bit personal for me because, of course, in that time frame, I've worked with women who have been traumatized on every single level. So I just want you to reflect, if possible, and hopefully vote down this bill regarding the increased trauma that women would experience as far as the transvaginal ultrasound that would be required. It's not medically necessary. It's very emotional for women who have already experienced potential violence as a result of their pregnancy. It's just an unnecessary and very damaging aspect. I have a 16-year-old daughter. I would hate for her to have this experience. So please think about that process. Obviously, in comparison, this is not back surgery. This is not a vasectomy. This is about cellular division, and any time frame matters. And if you are allowing women to more safely and effectively support their bodies, that is the key. If you are engaging in something that is really a mental manipulation and also traumatizing, that's damaging. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for joining us. Are there any registered lobbies that would like to come forward and testify on the bill? We've got one more seat if there's another one out there. Ma'am, why don't you go ahead and get us started, and you can state your name and you'll have 2 minutes for testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and honorable members of the committee. My name is Emma Laurent. I am a fourth-generation cowboy from Sheridan, and I am speaking in opposition to HB 64. I am also the statewide engagement and political director for Wyoming United for Freedom. We are a nonpartisan organization focused on protecting reproductive freedoms and defending our constitutional rights from government overreach. Regardless of personal beliefs on abortion, we trust and respect the hardworking people of Wyoming and honor their right to govern their own bodies. As you consider HB 64, I ask that you apply the same logic you applied last week when passing HB 96, prohibiting mask, vaccine, and testing discrimination. In this bill, the committee voted that no one should be discriminated against based on a personal health decision. By mandating that a pregnant person undergoes a non-medically needed ultrasound is in direct conflict with the logic you applied in HB 96. I ask you, regardless of your personal or sacred beliefs, to apply equity to all legislation that you consider in this committee. Forcing non-medically needed ultrasounds on women seeking medication abortions in the early gestation stage of pregnancy is not only a coercive act to guilt women into keeping pregnancies, but discriminates against women by stripping us of our bodily autonomy and the social compact that we, as an entire gender, can make our own healthcare decisions. Anything less is an admittance that you believe women are second-class citizens. The majority of this committee agreed that putting on a paper mask is constricting and violates personal freedoms, as is undergoing an invasive transvaginal ultrasound, the type of ultrasound needed to detect an early gestation pregnancy. I ask you to consider these constitutionally protected parallels and honor the Wyoming tradition of freedom from government overreach and private healthcare decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect timing. Thanks for your testimony. Sir, please state your name and we'll hear your testimony. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Mike Lehman. I represent the Catholic Diocese of Cheyenne, which represents the Catholic Church around the state of Wyoming. In support of this legislation, to be clear, we have been and will continue to advocate for legal protection of the preborn because we see it as a human rights issue. One of the points I want to make this morning with regard to the idea that abortion is healthcare, obviously that is coming before the courts. And for me, in my position here in 9 years, I think that's going to be a very difficult claim to make since for years we were told that abortions don't happen in Wyoming. Of the many OBGYN providers out there, the percentages that actually provide abortion, there's only 1, maybe 2 at a time. And then on top of that, the largest advocacy groups who advocate on the behalf of healthcare providers throughout the state, whenever there's been abortion restriction bills come before the committees here, they have either remained silent on the issue or they've testified publicly that their position is that they will not take a position on abortion-related bills. And so I think that's going to be a very difficult point to prove if abortion is necessary, elective abortion is necessary healthcare. Why so much silence? I recognize representing a Catholic institution, I'm sensitive to the idea that we're trying to push our religious views on people. Interestingly enough, I only hear that on this issue. And as you know, Madam Chairman and other members of the committee, we advocate on many different things, nonpartisan. I never hear that on this issue. One of my favorite groups that I follow today is a group called Secular Pro-Life. Their executive director and their whole board are atheists. This has not anything to do with pushing a religious viewpoint. It's recognizing this is a human rights issue. And we support this bill because moms have every bit of dignity as the life in their womb as well. They deserve legal protection as much as the unborn child does. And so I would just conclude, Madam Chairman, by saying that it is not a radical or extreme position to seek legal protection for the vulnerable and the weak. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lehman. Perfect timing as well. Please state your name and you have 2 minutes to testify.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, committee. My name is Sarah Burlingame. I represent Wyoming Equality, and we are in opposition to this bill. And I'm going to break with all previous tradition. Never once have I quoted former President Ronald Reagan, but I'm going to do it today. And he said, "I think you all know that I've always felt that the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help." And that was the thought that was going through my mind as I listened to the bringer of this bill talk about the compassion that he felt for women in Wyoming and how he was here to help us. And, you know, we all want to engage each other sincerely and really place faith in what people are saying and what their intentions are. And I just quickly Googled, where is the United States of America in maternal mortality? We're number 55th. We're number 55 in the world. And why is that? Partially because we don't have access to good health care. And as we've seen, and as many people have attested here in Wyoming, we are running into a healthcare desert in our rural counties. One thing that would address that is the expansion of Medicaid. And so when I look at the sincerity of folks and say, are they really trying to help women in Wyoming? Are they really trying to address the issue? I look at where they are in that issue and I find that they don't match up. And you know, the other data point that seems interesting to me is I've always appreciated the little fetal feet. They're cute. I like babies. I loved being pregnant. Even if I did throw up around the clock, I still really liked the experience. But my feet are much larger than that. The average size of feet for women in America is 8.5. And, I understand that it would be really cumbersome and it would look really silly to have 8.5 size pins on you. But I also believe that it would be sincere. And that when I look to the people who were saying, I am here to protect you, I'm here from the government,
Burlingame, you're out of time.
I would trust their sincerity. Thank you. And I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
All right, committee, I'm going to close public comment. What is your pleasure on House Bill 64? Moved by Representative Guggemos. Second by Representative McCann. Discussion.
Madam Chairman.
Representative Yin.
Madam Chairman, it's funny that we've had several bills that talk about, enforcing bodily autonomy and freedom over, blood. I think that was a huge thing that we just had in the very last bill. And yet this is one where we are telling women that they have to have a medical procedure done against their will. And I'm trying to rack my brain on whether we have that anywhere in state statute. I don't think it exists in Wyoming state statute where we tell someone they have to undergo a medical procedure. They have to. The state requires them to undergo a medical procedure. And not only that, but it's a felony if that isn't performed before an abortion, right? So we're going to put people in jail and we're going to force a medical procedure on women. I think that is the antithesis of what we talk about when we talk about freedom in the state of Wyoming. So it's really mind-boggling, members, on the tack that we take when we talk about bodily autonomy, except for women. So not only the fact that we still have a court case in progress, and so we're putting this on a just-in-case basis, just in case the court case gets overturned because our bill turned out to be unconstitutional, we're going to have this bill put in place in the next bill and several other more bills because we're going to hear about this topic year after year, no matter what happens in the court. Help me understand, members, how we are actually protecting people's freedom with this bill. What problems are we solving? If your intent is actually to stop abortions, why don't we just provide people with the health care that they need to survive a pregnancy and raise families in Wyoming? That's what I would love to do, not tell people that they should go out of state to do it, or if they're poor, not have an abortion at all and force a pregnancy on them. So thank you, members, for letting me have that.
Okay. Committee, Representative Guggemos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In answer to that question, what problem are we solving? According to the FDA report, June 2022, there were 28 reported deaths in mothers associated with that mifepristone, however you pronounce it, one of these abortion drugs. Then there have been 4,000 reports of adverse events from mothers experiencing hemorrhage and life-threatening infections. And the abortion pill has caused over 1,000 reported hospitalizations, excluding death. And those are just the reported ones. So as far as what problems are we trying to solve, I would say this would be one of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, any proposed amendments? Walking through the bill, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's no fiscal impact note attached to this bill. Okay, question being called by Representative Ottman. Mr. Caldwell, if you would call the roll on House Bill 64.
This is a roll call vote for House Bill 64. Representative Clouston.
Aye.
Representative Guggemos.
Aye.
Representative Heft. Representative McCann. Representative Ottman.
Aye.
Representative Stivar.
Excused.
Representative Wasserberger. Aye. Representative Yen.
No.
Chairman Rodriguez-Williams.
Aye.
Madam Chairman, that is 7 aye, 1 no, and 1 excused.
Thank you, committee. House Bill 64 has passed. Speaker Nyman will present that bill on the floor. It looks like he's left. Okay, committee, we will move on to House Bill 42. I realize we are short in time, but we're going to keep moving and working hard. Welcome Representative Lawley to Labor and Health. This bill is titled Regulation of Surgical Abortions. And if you would please introduce yourself and walk us through your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning, Labor and Health Committee. I'm Martha Lawley, House District 27, and it's my privilege to bring to you House Bill 42. As long as abortion remains legal in Wyoming, we have the responsibility for the safety of women getting abortions. House Bill 42 provides for basic common sense regulations for surgical abortions to protect the health and safety of women who choose to get a surgical abortion. Madam, I will be happy to walk you through the bill and then answer any questions. I will comment before we go through the bill that I know some of you weren't here last session, but this was substantially the same bill that the governor vetoed. It was different in that we had added the bill that you just heard into this, but this was a bill that the governor vetoed. It passed the House, it passed the Senate, and it went to the governor's desk. And so it's one that has gone through some stages, but I would like to just direct your attention to the definitions in the bill. They're very intentional in terms of how we're trying to align some different things in definitions. So again, the definition of abortion in the bill, and then again, the distinction that we are talking in this bill about surgical abortions only. And there's a specific definition I'll draw your attention to on page 4 of surgical abortion in particular. And there's also a definition of surgical abortion facility in the bill. First of all, the bill calls for licensure of surgical abortion facilities. And you'll see on page 5, beginning at line 11 through 16, that surgical abortion facilities shall be licensed as an ambulatory surgical center. I'll go back to the definitions. I believe that's also in the definitions. There is a definition statutorily we'll get to of what an ambulatory surgical center is. And one thing the bill does is it brings surgical abortion centers into that definition. You'll see that in a moment. So it also requires that until a surgical abortion facility that's currently, we're operating in Wyoming, becomes an ambulatory surgical center, meets those requirements, they cannot perform any abortions. I would say next in the bill, I'd point out to you is that these licensures are not transferable. And that's kind of important for recognizing continuity of and whether or not the facilities are complying. So they're not transferable. Someone would have to get another license if they bought the facility. There's also a reporting requirement you'll see on page 6. Report surgical abortions to the Department of Health and attest in the report that the physician licensed is licensed and in good standing with the State Board of Medicine here in Wyoming. There's some documents that the licensed physician has admitting privileges, a requirement, on page 6, Romanet 2. There's a provision that requires that the licensed physician performing the abortion has privileges at a hospital not more than 10 miles away. And this is an important provision if something goes wrong in an abortion. There can be botched abortions, and then there's a need for a higher level of care for that patient. And so having the ability for doctors to have that permission and to get someone into a medical facility if needed. There's also some penalties you'll see on page 6 for failure to comply with the statutory requirements of licensure. Let's see. Again, there's, only to be performed by licensed physicians, and there's a violation specifically for that particular violation. It's separate from the other violations and penalties for those violations. So, and it's a felony for a doctor to come into our state who's not licensed in Wyoming and perform abortions, is basically what that's telling you. Again, the idea of admitting privileges at a hospital more than 10 miles away. And then you'll see on page 9 where we actually go into the statute with the definition of ambulatory surgical centers, and we add to that, ambulatory surgical center shall include any surgical abortion facility as defined by, and that's the statute that already exists. So with that, Madam Chairwoman, I would just stand for any questions of the bill. For many of us, it's very familiar. We voted on it last time. So any questions that you have?
Thank you, Representative Lawley. And I was made aware that there was a typo in the bill in which the committee was provided a proposed amendment with my name on it. And it's simply, for the public, it's simply on page 8, line 1, delete $1,000 and insert $1,000. It makes it look like the fine is $1 million instead of $1,000. So just a simple correction noted by LSO for the committee.
Yes, thank you.
Any questions of Representative Lawley, specifically the content of her bill? From the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you for presenting in our committee this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Sorry, we do have one. Representative McCann.
Madam Chair, I just didn't know where to bring this up. Probably sooner rather than later, as far as some of these surgery centers aren't close enough to an upper echelon hospital. Just consider extending the mileage out a little bit. As far as, I mean, we're very rural, so there's some places that, you know, aren't, a licensed surgery center is probably going to get tasked with this, and they might not be close. That's just something for us to think about as we go along.
Representative Lawley.
Madam Chairwoman, Representative McCann, I also live in a rural area. The 10-mile radius might be something to look at. I might suggest something like 10-mile radius, or the nearest hospital. But where there is a close one, we want to have the ability, because there has been those kind of situations where we need to get someone to care. But that might be something that would be helpful in a rural situation. For the ambulatory care center, sometimes in some rural places, they're actually in the hospital, but part of the hospital. But anyway, I would just say that that would be fine.
Additional questions of the bill sponsor from the committee? Okay. See none, thank you. Okay. So we obviously will not take all of public comment due to time today. We gavel in at 10 a.m. So please raise your hand if you do plan on testifying on this bill. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, 12. And yeah. So same protocol as the last bill, same order. And I don't want to choke out public comment by having the committee ask lots of questions of those that are testifying. So first, we will call up government agencies. Are there any government agencies? Welcome, Director. Good morning. If you just state your name and your testimony on House Bill 42.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members of the committee, Stefan Johansson, I'm the Director for the Wyoming Department of Health. I'll keep my comments brief, mostly here just as a resource to answer any questions you have. As we've talked about on 2 previous bills in this committee, this adds licensure and regulatory duties to my Office of Healthcare Licensing and Survey. And the way that this would work is adding a definition for surgical abortion facility to our regulatory requirements for ambulatory surgical centers. As a reminder to the committee, that office that we operate in the Department of Health has 2 functions. One is on state licensure and state survey of healthcare facilities that are defined in statute. Everything from hospitals, nursing homes, boarding homes, ambulatory surgical centers, a variety of different provider types. That entails a regulation of certain physical plant conditions, construction, physical layout, et cetera, as well as some care survey measures. And then the second component that is not at play in this bill, but that our Office of Healthcare Licensing and Survey participates in is on the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services enforcing compliance with conditions of participation, which is generally a different list of provider types. As Representative Lawley pointed out in the bill, this would add a facility type to the definition of ambulatory surgical center. If it's helpful to the committee, we discussed this last year, but I'll point out that for ambulatory surgical centers, we survey and do recertification surveys on ambulatory surgical centers about every 3 years, not to exceed every 6 years. Our current average of when we are on site resurveying ambulatory surgical centers as of this month was about 2.5 years of when we would be there. Essentially how that works is that my staff go out, perform that survey, ensure all of those conditions are met. And again, if it's the will of this committee and the legislature to pass this bill, we would add those types of providers to this definition of an ambulatory surgical center. Madam Chairman, we did not include a fiscal note in this. We believe, given the volume, which could change over time, we don't know that hypothetically, but given the volume, we believe we could incorporate this into our current processes and current survey work. But as we pointed out on a previous bill on hospital price transparency, just want the committee to be aware and be transparent that it is an additional duty and a regulatory item that would be in statute that your Department of Health would certainly comply with. With that, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. Any questions of the Director from the committee? We're a quiet bunch. Thank you for joining us. Okay, we will move on. We've got a few minutes left here. We'll move on to public comment in the audience. So we'll start with opposition again. And if you can't make it back Friday, please be honest and come forward. If those folks would come forward first. Thank you. Welcome. Again, we'll be timed 2 minutes, and please try and keep your comments limited to just this bill. So thank you. Please state your name.
Hello, Madam Chairwoman, committee members. My name is Katie Knutter. I am the Executive Director of Wellspring Health Access. As previously stated, we are the only facility in the state of Wyoming that provides medication and procedural abortion currently. So we want to be really frank. This bill, which we call Targeted Regulations Against Abortion Providers, is not new. It's appeared in a variety of forms, including in this state last year, for the last 2 decades. And all reputable medical establishments, including the American Medical Association and the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, have voiced opposition to these measures over the years. And, we feel that this is specifically targeted to put us out of business and restrict healthcare services for people with punitive detrimental measures that increase cost and restrict healthcare options. The high standard of care provided by abortion clinics is evidenced by the fact that abortion is one of the safest medical procedures performed in the United States. Nationally, abortion entails half the risk of a tonsillectomy and 1/100th the risk of an appendectomy, and in the first trimester is 11 times safer than childbirth. Of women who have first trimester abortions, 97% represent no complications, 2.5% have minor complications, and less than 0.5 require surgical procedures or hospitalization. The reality is that to comply with this TRAP bill, it would force us to undergo extensive construction on our clinic, which is still pretty much brand new, but not included, but not limited to expanding hallways, altering the dimensions of our procedure rooms, changing out our HVAC system, and reconfiguring our janitorial setup. The other major barrier in this bill to us would be that it would compel all physicians at the clinic to receive hospital admitting privileges, which is often blocked solely for political reasons, but it is also often unable for physicians that provide abortion to obtain because they don't admit enough patients to the hospital every year, because abortion is very, very safe. And all of our physicians are currently licensed and
Ma'am,
insured
you're
in the
out of
state of
time.
Wyoming. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, moving on. Please state your name and 2 minutes for your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Dr. Renee Hinkle, OBGYN physician, Cheyenne, 26 years. I won't restate all of the oppositions I have for the abortion laws in general, but I will say as far as what Representative Guggenmoss stated as far as with the last bill, all of those complications were nationwide, and it's still, abortion is still a much, much safer, 11 times safer than progressing with a pregnancy. So pregnancy is still much more harmful to women than is an abortion. With this current bill, there's no reason for it. There are many procedures done in many doctors' offices across the country and in Wyoming. There are vasectomies that are done in offices. There are cystoscopies looking up into a person's bladder. There are hysteroscopies looking up into a person's uterus. And there are LEEP procedures, which have a much higher blood loss in offices than do abortions. So this is definitely a directed bill. And if you really are concerned about the safety of the citizens of Wyoming, you would include all of those because those have a higher complication rate than do abortions. Abortions are very safe, even done surgically. So it is a directed attack, and it is not necessary. All of the places in this bill that require that a physician doing one of these procedures is licensed by the state of Wyoming is not needed, because all procedures that are done in the state of Wyoming are done by licensed providers. You cannot perform or even prescribe to a patient in Wyoming unless you have a Wyoming license. So this is an unnecessary addition to this. It's not required. The surgery centers that are working in Wyoming have a 50-mile radius for hospital privileging. And so the fact that this was 10 is obviously just a target on the Wellspring Clinic.
Ma'am, you're out of time. Thank you for your testimony.
Good morning,
Please.
Wendy Volk from Cheyenne. As a business leader, I am completely opposed to this. I have never seen our legislature attack a single business. You're attacking one single business to drive them out of business in Wyoming. That is not pro-business. That is not pro-freedom. And I just want to tell you that by bans endanger patients and clinicians, and they disregard evidence-based public health guidance, they degrade longstanding medical ethical standards, and worst of all, they deny basic human rights to Wyoming women seeking reproductive health care here in our state. And again, I would just reiterate that each of you as legislators will have to answer to the impact of your efforts that you will be making on human lives, to women, their families, their healthcare providers. We are driving OBGYNs out of this state. We cannot continue this culture. We can't afford to do that. There's no way you can recruit enough doctors and nurses and other practitioners in to replace the talent we're losing. So please think very carefully and please oppose this type of legislation. It is not effective for helping establish Wyoming is welcoming all families to our state.
Thank you, Ms. Volk. Thank you all for your testimony. We're going to pause public testimony at this time. Again, thank you to the public for joining us on both of these bills, or all three of these bills today. Committee, we will continue House Bill 42 on Friday when during our next committee meeting and pick up with public comment on it. Our committee meeting is adjourned.